Delta Dart build part 2. So when we met last, we glued all of our pieces down to our paper for our Delta Dart. And today we're going to be constructing the actual plane itself. For this project, you're going to need your propeller, 4 straight pins, glue, your Q-tip, and a ruler, and a cutting device. So the first thing we need to do is detach or cut out our pieces from our paper. We need to be very careful when we're cutting these out because we don't want to cut into the wood. We want to make sure we're cutting right along the edge of it. So for that reason, I would recommend not pushing real hard as you cut, but making several cuts to cut through. Now you just need to cut through the paper. You don't need to cut through the cardboard. We're going to need this cardboard, so we don't want to cut through it. So you're wanting to cut through the paper, and it's okay if you do just kind of cut into the cardboard. That won't hurt anything. But making multiple passes over one area will be the best way to cut it. So I'm just going to start right down here. Now on this piece, remember, we have a slit going from A to B. So when we make our cut here, we only need to cut from this point out. We don't need to cut this piece, okay? So I'm just going to start my cutting. I'm just going to follow my cutting device right along the edge of the wood. I don't want to cut into the wood because then I'm going to be altering my plane. I'm going to make a couple of passes. Now remember, you've got glue on there, so that may make it more difficult. You may have to come back and cut some other pieces if you can't lift it up. So I'm going to make a couple passes there. You see I'm going slow so that I can control my knife. I've got some glue right there I've got to get through. And then I have to cut this little piece here too. And for your case, it might be easier to turn the cardboard to make these cuts. I'm going to try to do it without having to do that today so that you can see better. Let's see, I have some extra glue there. So I'm just going to make a couple passes here. This is where over gluing can have an effect on how this comes out. So you can turn your cardboard so that the cutting is easier. In fact, I'm going to have to turn it to make this cut. I can't cut from that angle. So I'm going to cut right here. Make sure you're keeping this hand out of the way. If you're going too fast, pushing too hard, these are all ways you can end up getting cut. Now let's see if I cut it all the way. If I lift up, and it should come out just like that. I have this piece. I'm going to lay that off to the side very carefully. Now, I want you to go ahead and continue cutting out. Remember, you're cutting out the outside edge. Don't cut out these pieces inside. Make sure you're following the outside edge of your pieces. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish doing that. I will say that cutting just beyond where you need to go will help you. That gets those corners cut out really well. You see I'm cutting just the outside edges. I'm not cutting the inside edges. Now here's an instance where I probably had a tad too much glue in some spots. So I've got to go back very carefully. You don't want to tear this. You want to make sure you're cutting it. If you tear it, you might tear it off of the wood. or tear another part. So we want to make sure we're just cutting through. And my problem is I have a little too much glue right in here. This is where over gluing is not your friend. I'm just going through, cutting off those little spots where I have too much glue. That piece comes loose. And remember I said we would have this flexibility in this piece, and that's exactly what I want for our build. Now I'm going to do my last piece. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but when my knife hits a thick glue spot, it makes a little squeak. Let's see if I'm loose. I am there, not here. A little glue, extra glue there. A little extra glue there. Too much glue. Even I did too much glue. This is why we didn't want to do too much glue. It makes it more difficult. And you see I'm caught. I'm not tearing that loose. I'm going to go back and make sure that I cut that, because I need those clean edges. And there's that piece. All right. Now we need to construct our plane. For that, we're going to turn our cardboard over. So turn over your cardboard to your clean side, just like this. The first part we're going to do is we're going to take this piece, the body, and we're going to be attaching this piece right here first. Now, the part that we're going to be attaching is this board right here, this little strip. Not that joint, not that joint, just this strip. And we're going to be attaching that strip to this location right up here, okay? But we need to make a mark first. We need to make sure that this starts, that board hits 1.25 inches back from here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a ruler and we're going to find 1 inch. Find 1 inch. Let me see if I can get you in focus here. 1.25 inches, which is 1 inch and 1/4. And we're going to mark just the top of our plane at 1.25 inches. I'm going to put a little, just a little, I don't need a big mark, just a little mark, so that I just put a little mark right here. My camera's having trouble focusing this morning. And that is going to allow me to place my wing. All right, so my wing is going to go just like this. Alrighty. So I need some glue to go from that 1.25 inch mark to back here. So I'm going to just make a little mark for that too. I'm going to say from there to right there. That's where I want my glue. Okay? Remember, we're just gluing that board. Okay, I'm going to set that back over there. I've got my glue here. Give me a little glue, and I'm going to put a bead of glue right down this board. And I am putting a little bit more than what we've used in the past. You can see it's not running off the edges or anything. But I want to make sure that that is well coated, because that's what's going to hold the wing on. That's where I want my glue. Now, I'm going to put on my wing. I'm going to lay mine on the side for a minute, just so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to put that little board right on there, just like that. And you're going to want to make sure that they match really well. I'm going to pick my plane up very carefully. Make sure that I am in the proper spot. So when I look down on this from the top, I should see that this line in my pattern runs right along the line of my body. So I want to make sure that's nice and straight. Just like that. Then I'm going to take 2 of my straight pins. These are straight pins. And I'm going to put one right here. Push it right down into the wood. Doesn't have to go a long way in, but what I'm doing, and I'm putting it on a little bit of an angle because this is going to hold this in place while it dries. And if you remember, there's a little bit of a joint right here in this area, and that's what I'm using to put my pen through. So there's a spot right there where those 3 pieces come together that allows me to go through the paper, and then I can, oop, I think I missed. I went in way too easy. And then I can pin that on there. So, and my pens are on an angle, you can see that. And the reason I do that is it's going to actually hold this in place. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to take our propeller. Okay, you have a propeller, and on your propeller you have a little white cap thing, and there's a little red, or a little wire loop. That wire loop needs to be on the bottom of your plane, on the bottom of your plane. So if you're looking at it like this, the bottom of the plane, the loop has to be on the bottom. You do not want it on top, you want it on the bottom. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to just slide these on there. Now, if it's a little tight, what I can do, I don't want to do too much, but I can trim off just a little bit of my wood. I want this to be on here tight, so if I trim off too much, it won't stay on. I put that on upside down, didn't I? So we're going to flip it over so my wire's on the bottom and put it on just like that. That's what it should look like. Okay? Now, this next part's a little tricky, and it's going to take some patience and probably your partner to do. This is how we're going to adjust the angle that these flaps need to be at. So we're going to turn the plane upside down so that it's sitting on the rudder and on the blades, just like that. You want to try to make it standing up as straight as possible. And what we need to do is pin these wings into this location because this is the right angle we need in order to make this fly. And how we're going to do that is we're going to go into these corners. Once we have it setting like this and it's up nice and straight, and if it's not right off the bat, I'll show you a little trick. I've got it relatively straight right now. This pin is going to go right through the paper right here and into the cardboard on a little bit of an angle. Okay? Now that I've got that one pinned, I can come back and let's turn this a little better. Let's turn it this way. I can make sure that it's sitting on the tip of my propeller. I guess it's better the other way. I'll go back this way. I want it on the tip of my rudder and on the tip of my propeller, and you can see how that is. And then we're going to come over and we're going to pin this side. Now, you don't want to push in anymore because you want to make sure that these 2 points are touching the cardboard. So right now, mine's in perfect position. And what that's going to do is help with your flight pattern. It's getting the right angle, so you'll have the right amount of lift on this wing. And I'm going to put a pin right there. And then, just to hold it that way, I'm going to come back with my glue. Okay. And I'm going to put a little dollop right in here and right in here and right in here I'm hitting all these joints, and I'm putting it on the body of the plane and on the piece of wood that is attached to the wing, and I'm just creating a secure joint. All right, and that's our build for today. Oh, no, it's not. We need a rudder or a tail wing. All right, so this has to go on, sorry. So this piece right here is going to go on back here. And we're going to put some glue right down here. This is going to be placed on here just like this. You can see this line. There's a faint line in there. That needs to match the body. So I'm going to come back in. I can kind of see how far I need to go with my glue, which is pretty much where this paper ends from the rudder. And we're just going to go down that little piece. And because we're using tacky glue, if you use just the right amount, you won't need a pen or anything to hold this in place. And I'm going to place that with that line following the line of the body and get it as best centered as I can. Okay. And that's our build for today. Now we're done.